Well, I am glad to be with you. I have been praying for this event for several months. You know, like it was just told to you, there was a time when I was married to a woman who was actively involved in ministry with me, and for 13 years, my mom lived with us too before she passed away. And my wife used to pray for me that you wouldn't make me nervous. And my mom used to pray for you that I wouldn't make you nervous. And since they have both passed away, we're in trouble, you know. As was said there, I have been married. I am currently married. I have 4 biological children, and my wife now has 2 biological children, so we have 6 children between us. And between us, we have 16 grandchildren, which the only time that's not fun is Christmas, you know. Breaks the bank. But other than that, it seems like every day there's someone to enjoy and another story to hear, and you all have those same kinds of experiences, I hope, whether it comes from family or friends or neighbors or your church family as well. What I want to tell you as to why I'm excited is because it's time for you to have a weekend where you get to unwind. I know many of you live at Redline, and I hope that you won't just redline fun. I hope you'll downshift, whether it's fun or whether it's relaxing or whether it's connecting with someone else. I hope that you'll take the time to unwind. I also hope that you'll take the time to connect. I know that this is an annual event, and even though we've had a pause because of COVID, I know that there are friendships that are made, and so some of you are going to rekindle friendships that you've established in the past, and others of you are going to make new ones, and I hope you'll take the time to do that. And I also want you to take the time to reboot. I mean, you get today, tomorrow, and Sunday to go home with a running start of 3 days on a habit. Okay? Whether it's saying no to something that you've been trying to say no to at home, and it just seems like the minute you say no, something invades your will or your circumstances, and you're right back to it. Well, you get 3 days to kind of get a running start at it. And it'll be my hope that with the connections you've made, that you go home with the support to be able to take day 4 and day 5 and day 6. For some of you, it's just the break from a cell phone that's going to give you the momentum to be able to stop something that you use your cell phone for that you wish you didn't. For others of you, it's going to be the idea that you actually get a break from family and you're going to be able to orient yourself to God. How do I want to go home to that family? How do I get to be the person that brings the kingdom of God to them? Those are things that I'm hoping for. I have a friend who teaches youth ministry at a college in Indiana, and he was given a grant to simply study youth conferences, okay? And his takeaway, which was nothing earth-shattering, was that it gives a great altar moment. At a youth conference, a student gets the opportunity to make a decision, make a commitment, put something on an altar, so to speak. But if they don't have any follow-up, if they don't have encouragement, if they don't have a coach, if they, in a sense, don't have an adult who is going to walk with them, it evaporates quickly. And I don't think that's just a student phenomenon. I think this is an opportunity for you to have an altar moment, a time where you can do some business with God, and you can come to a place of being able to say, God, that's what I want to leave at that camp, or that's what I want to pick up at that camp. This is what I want to be able to see as something you want to do from here on out. I hope that's something that happens to you on this weekend, that it's an altar moment for you, where it isn't just something that evaporates. I'm going to spend 4 times looking at Psalm 23 with you. Psalm 23 is one of the most familiar, and sometimes because of that, the hardest psalm to look at one more time. If you listen to music, you've heard people like Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead, YouTube, Tupac, Marilyn Manson, and Megadeth all sing songs about Psalm 23. Hopefully you haven't heard all of them sing them, okay? Movies of X-Men, Nightcrawler, Book of Eli, and funerals like crazy throughout almost every movie that has a funeral in it quote Psalm 23. And so somewhere along the line, it's become a very popular or familiar psalm, even outside the church as well. What I find fascinating about this psalm is that it's written probably by David, who most of us know was a shepherd, okay? The interesting thing was, if you knew much about the life of David, he was a shepherd who didn't just watch sheep. He was a shepherd who protected his sheep by killing bears barehanded. Not with a bear's hand, but barehanded. He was a shepherd who killed a lion. You know, he's a warrior who takes on a seasoned giant and slays him. He's an outdoor survivalist. He's handsome. You know, I love the passage where he gets selected by Samuel, because the first guy walks in and he must have been like movie star handsome. And Samuel goes, that must be him. And God's saying, I don't look at the outward appearance of a man, just at their heart. And then David walks in and God says, isn't he good looking too? I'm going, what are you doing? Look at his heart, you know. But he's a handsome guy, and to top it all off, he's a musician and a poet, which makes him a chick magnet. So as we kind of look at this whole thing, you'd think that someone like that, if he's going to describe God, might describe him as a mighty warrior. You'd think he might describe him as somebody who can take on anything and win, a victor, you know. But in describing him as a shepherd, the interesting thing is that David doesn't even say, I'm a shepherd, let me tell you about shepherds and who God is. He says, I'm going to take the posture of a sheep. I'm going to describe God as a shepherd being my shepherd. That I'm going to take this position of a sheep. And being a shepherd, he knows that they're stinky, they're stupid, and they're defenseless. Why would a king, a mighty warrior, a survivalist, take on that posture unless he realized, compared to God, that's what I am? I mean, God is awesome, and he wants us to understand that. And he's saying, the best way I can do it is for me to describe myself in terms of a sheep, and he's my shepherd. Okay, I live in Wenatchee, which is in the center of the state of Washington, and I was about to go up and turn my lights off of my car. I live in the center of the state in Washington, and what's interesting about living there is that it's more of an agricultural community than Portland. You know, surprise. I've started going to this church. There's, you know, on a great day, I mean, like when I see the parking lot full, I'm going, oh my gosh, there might be 80 people here today, okay? I go to a little tiny church where the reason I go there is because I feel loved. You know, and it's my hope that we're going to make a difference loving people in the Wenatchee Valley. But when I look at that in terms of how I would describe myself, I want to describe myself in terms of someone who's been at bigger churches, who's done bigger things, who comes in here and I can bless you. Rather than they just want to say, you know what, Bill, we don't need all of your gifts and bells and whistles. We're going to love you, and it's going to change your life. And that's what I hope you hear out of this thing this week. It's not that God is so awesome, what else could he do but make your life awesome? But that he loves you in such a way that makes your life awesome. That you can do the very things that you were doing last week that you thought were boring, but because you have an exhilarating love, you can do those with a completely different attitude. You can embrace your life in such a different way when it kind of like isn't what we're trying to do is get our meaning out of it, but we get to bring our meaning to it. And our meaning comes from being able to be connected to someone who gives us meaning. And for David, that was a shepherd. And he talks about it in such amazing ways. It would kind of be like a dad who wants to describe fatherhood by describing it from being the little kid. You know, that you take on that position of weakness just to talk about how amazing dad is. He works, so he provides for me. He fixes things, so he cares for us. He coaches t-ball, so I'm not afraid when other people are on the field because my dad coaches and champions me. When you're a dad, sometimes you think, I got to grow up because people need me. And I wasn't really ready to not have a dad myself, because you are trusting something or someone to provide for you, whether that's a company, an employer, an economy, a dollar that might be worth something. Those are things that we are trusting. We trust someone to care for us, whether that's a doctor or an insurance company, a restaurant employee, a hotel or a flight attendant. We think people are going to care for us. We need a champion, whether that's a spouse, a friend, a work buddy, a friend from church. But all of those ways that people meet needs are simply ways where they mirror or image or reflect who God is and what he does for us. He cares for us. He provides for us. He champions us. And that's what David's talking about when he's talking about God in this passage. And we need those things, and yet we usually don't know we need them until they're missing. COVID has highlighted some of that. Sometimes it's a company's instability where you work. Sometimes it's the inflation that we're experiencing, an illness that you experience, or a death of a loved one. And all of a sudden, you realize you do feel abandoned or alone. And you desperately need a presence of someone who loves you. You feel neglected and uncared for, and desperately know that you need someone who'll care for you. Or an uncertainty, and you need a stabilizing force in your life or your family. Those are the things that David describes as what it's like to have God as your shepherd, that you do experience those. So I'm going to ask that Psalm 23 would be put up on the screen, and we're going to go ahead and just read this together, okay? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Kind of the big idea that I want us to hear tonight is that there's nothing better than having the Lord as your shepherd. There's nothing better than having the Lord as your shepherd. Now, you've probably heard some people talk about the nothing betters. There's nothing better than sleeping on Egyptian cotton with a my pillow. You know, maybe there's nothing better than flying first class. Nothing better than a cold beer on a hot day. Nothing better than being pleasantly surprised by a lower price than you were expecting to pay. By a warning from a policeman rather than a ticket. There's nothing better. And yet I want you to understand there is. There's actually nothing better than having the Lord as your shepherd. And that's what David is trying to convince us of. And the first thing he tells us is there's nothing better because he guides us. In every day, in every step, in every path. Most people want God to guide them so that there's no pain and there's no failure. But I'll take care of the rest. And God is saying, I want to direct your steps. I want to direct your paths. So coming from Wenatchee, I just came down Highway 97 right across at Biggs and then kept coming straight. And I'm going, man, I should have ridden my motorcycle today. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden there's this little turn to come to camp. And I'm going, I didn't see that. And I just kept going. And about an hour down the road, I'm going, or a half hour down the road, I'm going, I wouldn't have described this camp as by antelope, you know? And so I turned around and came back and found the turnoff to the camp. And the next 10 miles, I was so glad I didn't ride my motorcycle, you know? And so when it says that he directs our paths or guides us in paths of righteousness, it's like when you're a sheep, there are a million trails out there. How do you know which one's the right one? And, you know, if you were a Hebrew listening to that, you know, it would say he makes our paths straight. He has us pick the right path, okay? They're still kind of not over the idea that God took them on a 40-year walk for a 3-week journey. You know, it didn't feel like the right path to them. It certainly didn't feel like straight paths. Okay? So when it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll make your paths straight. It's talking about there is a right path to take. There was a right path to camp, and I didn't know it. I didn't have a guide. You know? We have a guide that helps us live life in right ways. He talks about it as still waters. Okay? He talks about it as green pastures. In Ezekiel 34, Ezekiel says, you know what? The people who've been leading the people of Israel have been bad shepherds. And God says, it was bad that you had bad shepherds, but it's really bad even if you have no shepherd. If you're just on your own, Ezekiel 34:18 says this, is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture, that you must tread down with your feet the rest of the pasture? So he's saying you've got great green grass here to eat. And rather than staying on edge and just nibbling this way for days, you've turned around and you're trampling down tomorrow's food by eating what you're doing today. You need a shepherd to even teach you how to eat. You know, when you're a sheep, he talks about pristine waters. He leads me beside still waters. In the rest of that verse in Ezekiel, it says, and drink clear water, must you muddy the rest of the water with your feet? And so it's like, I'm going to get my drink and everybody else is on their own. And the shepherd kind of says, hey, there's a whole flock here. Let's just kind of, you know, get in and out. Let's drink this in a way that we all get a great drink of water rather than you alone get a great drink of water. We need a shepherd in order to know how to live with other people, let alone manage our own lives. And again, the right paths. So what I want to suggest there is that there's nothing greater than the Lord being your shepherd, because that shepherd guides us. But there's a second part of it. He doesn't just guide us. He provides for us. You know, he does that in all kinds of ways, where he says, the Lord is my shepherd, I have no want, or I have no needs. He says a little bit further down, my cup runneth over. Jesus says in John 10, the thief comes to kill and destroy, but I've come that you might have life and might have it to the full, or have it abundantly, which would be the same thing as my cup runneth over. You know, the picture that God gives us is that you don't have a life of scarcity. Scarcity is a kingdom that's not God's. God's kingdom is one of abundance. And he invites us to live in that kind of faith, trusting him for, I will have no want. So you're saying, you're telling me that I'll have no wants? This is awesome. And what I want to tell you is that you'll need nothing that's required to follow Jesus. That's what I'm telling you no wants is. That you'll have absolutely no lack when it comes to knowing how to follow Jesus. So when I was first married and we had our first child about a year and a half later, I was starting seminary, and I stepped out of seminary and started working for a guy with this noble job. I was a ditch digger. And we went around to Union 76 stations all over the state of Washington, sometimes all over Oregon, and sometimes into Washington. And what we were doing was all the pipes were, at that time, they were metal, and we were pulling those up, filling a ditch with pea gravel, and putting in a fiberglass pipe. Okay, and so that's what we were simply doing, is pulling up old pipe, putting in different pipe. And this guy that was my boss was an old guy. He's probably 5 or 6 years younger than I am now. And this old guy was kind to me. And he would watch me dig a ditch and go, "Do you think that's a good ditch?" And I'm going, "It's a ditch." He's going, "No, there's such a thing as a good ditch and a bad ditch." And I'm telling you, that's a bad ditch, And so I went to ditch digging 101, and he taught me how to dig a gravitational, great, nice walls ditch, okay? And in that process, I got to know him well. And my wife and I went over to his house several times for dinner, and the first time we went over to his house, he lived in a rickety, rundown house that was probably 90 years old, that was kind of right behind where Clackamas Town Center is now. And at that time, it was just fields. And his house was there, and behind his house was all the stuff that we would ever need on any construction site. It was just a mess that had been categorized by him. Okay, and so he had this whole mess in his backyard in this old house, and you walked in, and it was one of those houses where, he had carpet, but it wasn't wall-to-wall carpeting, and it wasn't a place, like a throw rug. It was just kind of wrong. And so he had that kind of vibe going on through the whole house. It was just, it wasn't early American, it was just early marriage. And so, as he kind of had that whole thing going on there, I went over to one side of his living room, and I said, "Tell me about this picture here." And he came over and he goes, "Oh, that's my pride and joy." And I go, "Well," and it was a housing development that was half done. I said, "Tell me about it." And he said, "This is a housing development that I'm doing all by myself. I bought the place, I'm putting in the streets, I'm putting in the electric, I'm putting in everything, and I'm building the houses, and I'm selling them, and I'm carrying a contract on every one of them." And he had about 30 of them sold at the time. And I'm going, this guy's making a lot of money. And I said, "So I just don't understand that and this house, And he said, "No, that's my mission field." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well," and he named every house, and that when he sold it, he sent a missionary to somewhere in the world. And he had over 30 missionaries that were sponsored by a 30-year contract on a house, that house was going to carry that missionary and that missionary and that missionary, and that was his agenda, and that's what he was doing. And it was pretty amazing, He was imaging God, providing for people, caring for them, making sure that their needs were taken care of so that they could be about following Jesus themselves. Okay? Paul says it this way in Philippians: "I know what it is to be brought low. I know what it is to abound. In any and every situation, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who gives me strength." Now, Paul couldn't do all things. He couldn't leap over mighty buildings, you know. He wasn't faster than a speeding bullet, but he could do everything he needed to do to follow Jesus. He had no wants. He was at a place where he was completely equipped to do what God wanted him to do. And so was this man who was teaching me how to dig a ditch. Okay, I want you to understand that's how much value God assigns to you. That he takes care of you so that you're equipped to follow him. He doesn't just say, handle it, or I'll see you at the end, or if you do well, we'll check in and you can check in. He gives you what you need in order to follow him, because there's nothing better than having Jesus as your Lord and Shepherd. So I want to tell you one final thing he does. So he guides us and he provides for us, but he also resides with us, you know, because he says, when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. You know, when he finishes up, he goes, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of the Lord, and all the days of my life, and I'll dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Both of those are talking about presence, experiencing the personal presence of God. So I want to suggest, what do you feel like when blank shows up? And I'm going to put in a few words, and I just want you to go through the process of trying to feel it, okay? What do you feel like when your boss shows up? What do you feel like when your kids show up? What do you feel like when your wife shows up? What do you feel like when your fishing buddy shows up? What do you feel like when the doctor shows up? What do you feel like when your neighbor shows up? So, what do you feel like when God shows up? If he were your shepherd, here's what David says. I will have no fear. I feel a sense of hope. I feel cared for. I feel celebrated. I feel loved. That's what David, as a sheep, using the metaphor of a sheep and using the description of God as a shepherd, says, that's how I feel. That's why it's so awesome to have him as a shepherd. He does that. He takes care of us. He provides for us. And he's right there with us. He resides with us. I think it changes our entire perspective. You know how there's a little debate on who would take who in a Superman-Batman competition? You know, I have been down to Portland more times than I care to say in the last month living in Wenatchee, but I work for Western Seminary, which is in Portland. So 3 Saturdays ago, I had to go down to Portland for a party to celebrate a professor. And last Saturday, I had to go down for graduation. And last Saturday, it was nice enough that I have a BMW Z3, like this little sports car, and it's a fun little car. I'd rather ride my motorcycle, and the only reason I have a motorcycle is because my wife wanted to drive the BMW, and so we negotiated a trade there. So I drove her car last Saturday to graduation, and I'm coming back. And, you know, it's about a 5-hour drive, and by the end of the 5 hours, you're getting a little antsy. And I'm between Quincy and Wenatchee, which if you know anything about it, there's absolutely nothing there, and there never should be. And so I'm like, in this car, I'm going, what the heck? And I just took off, and I'm going about 80, and it's fun, you know? And all of a sudden, this car comes up next to me, and I hear this brrr, and I could tell the car was looking at my car going, I'm Batman. You know, and it was a new Corvette, you know, and when it did that, it kind of like the nose went down, the back went up, and boom, he just took off, and he must have been going like 130, just bang, he was gone. And it just so happened that there was a cop coming the other way, and he made the U-turn, and I went, see ya, Batman, you know? But the thing that was interesting is just how powerful that car was. You know what I mean? And you get this idea that, you know, Batman is the guy who would drive that, right? And you're just kind of, I think that David's picture of God as shepherd would have Batman going, I'm a shepherd. It was actually and is actually cooler than being Batman. To have Jesus as your shepherd, there's nothing better. There's nothing better. Because he guides us, he provides for us, and he resides with us. There's absolutely nothing better. And so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to understand that makes Jesus heroic. He's our hero. Now, the reason I want to kind of close with that concept is because, I teach a lot of people that want to go into ministry, and most of them think that they are going to be very, very successful. And one of the things that I do is I work with pastors, and one of the things that I probably have heard at least 30 times in the last 3 years is I didn't go to seminary to preach at a red dot. You know, the little blinking dot on a video camera. And when I hear that, my first question I want to ask is, why did you go to seminary? You know, because I'm guessing you went so you could preach to a crowd like this. And this isn't what God's inviting us to. He's inviting us to follow him, not be celebrities. You know, because we live in a celebrity culture where it's how many likes, how many follows, how many people know about you. That's not what a hero is. A hero is someone who has character and does what's right. And there are unsung heroes. People who never got caught being heroic, but they were heroic. There's no such thing as an unsung celebrity. You know? Celebrities are people who got caught being popular, or they did something that made them popular, and it might last for a day or it might last for their lifetime, but it is a artificial amp. And David is saying there's no artificial amp about Jesus being your shepherd. He's the real deal. And we spend our lives trying to find something else that will guide us, something else that will provide for us, something else that we would welcome its presence and prefer it more than him. And there's nothing better. There's nothing better. Might as well just stop looking. You might as well just join in and let him break the cycle of whatever it is that's been handcuffing you or sidelining you before you got here. Get a 3-day run at it before you go home. For some of you, it might just simply be that you've been isolated, and connecting with somebody may be what you go home with. For others of you, it may just be the idea that you're saying, porn has got a handle on me. And if I can take these next 3 days to just detox my soul a bit, maybe I can go home stronger. You can't go home and do it alone, but you get to go home with someone who is with you, the shepherd, who provides for you and directs you or guides you. It won't get better. You've got the best offer there is. And so tonight I want to invite you to just start there. Start there tonight and let it go this weekend, saying, Father, I have tried to shepherd on my own. I've been looking for other shepherds. In fact, I've even denied that I'm a sheep so that I don't need a shepherd. And God, I want to repent of that tonight and let you be my shepherd. So I'm going to take a moment for you to marinate in that, and then I'll kind of seal the deal in prayer, okay? God, thank you that we're not asking you to do something you don't want to do. You delight in being our shepherd. Speak to us in a way that we recognize your voice tonight. Use this weekend to clear out what's been causing us problems and to bring in the things that we need in order to follow you. Because when you're our shepherd, we have no want. There's nothing better. We claim that by faith in Jesus tonight. Amen.